Technology is changing the world at a rapid pace. Many foundational beliefs and behaviors that have prevailed for more than 30 years are unraveling rapidly, and technology is at the heart of that change. While society has historically determined the impact of technology, now technology is so powerful that it's often altering society, whether we intend it to or not. This opens up whole new angles on breakthrough, both why it's essential and how to achieve it.
You have to embrace a change mindset. You have to embrace the learner aspect of it, leaning in, understanding it. Then the fear goes away. Then the opportunities to change come to life.
That was Angel Ayala, Chief Information Technology Officer for Deloitte's Government and Public Services practice. He's a leader who's deeply committed to both evolving with technology and shaping how technology evolves. He empowers Deloitte practitioners and clients to use technology to create positive impact. And he's here today to share more about what he's doing to shape future breakthroughs. I'm Kim Christfort, Chief Innovation Leader for Executive Accelerators and the Deloitte Greenhouse. You're listening to Breakthrough by Design, where we chat with a diverse array of guests, from scientists to CEOs, academics to athletes, exploring what it takes to get to breakthrough. Angel, hello and welcome. It is so great to have you. So before we jump into what we've planned for today, I always love to just hear a little bit more about you. And one of the things that I know is that you are somebody who loves technology. You embrace it not only in your professional life, but in your personal life. So I want to know about your desk setup because I think I have desk setup envy.
Well, yes, I love technology. It makes me feel like a bit childlike, to be honest with you. My home setup is definitely a non traditional setup. I have a pretty wide angle monitor, it's about 49 inches. I love music. So I have some really great speakers when I want to go out loud and put some good jams to pep it up. I have smart lights as well that adapt to the weather and also the lighting outside of my house. Every time I enter to this home office is sort of a new experience. And I love that. I respect the importance of an environment that adapts to any possibilities of throughout the day. And I love that it has a bit of a emotional extension of myself. So that for me is what actually makes it very uniquely me at sorts, you know? But I'm always here. And Kim, I would be gladly and happy to help you transform your space.
I love that. I mean, in our Deloitte greenhouses, we are all about setting up an environment that helps people to get to breakthrough. And it sounds like you are doing that for your space. Yes, I would like that personal shopping list. I'm going to go out immediately. So what are the jams you listen to when you're trying to pump yourself up at work? What's an example of a song?
I love Coldplay. That's one of my biggest one. And Adventure of a Lifetime. It always just gets me pumped. So I probably drive my wife insane because it's sort of the one that is in constant loop. But talking about one that really just gets me going is Adventure of a Lifetime by Coldplay.
I love it. Excellent, excellent choice. All right. Well, I want to dig in because your background is such a fascinating one. You have entrepreneurial background, you have designer background. You've actually been the founder of multiple companies. You're collaborating across global cultures, and now you are the CIO of Deloitte's GPS business, which is one of our largest practices. So, can you just share more about your background? How did you get from there to here?
My passion and love for technology and experience have been a key driver into where I am. So I have been very lucky and very blessed throughout my life to embrace opportunity as it comes and not shy away from it. I've enjoyed every adventure that I've gotten. So it started foundationally from technology. And when I talk about technology is think about like seeing a computer for the first time. That premise and that feeling of jaw-dropping wow, I see that from the most minuscule thing that has the possibilities of so many big things. So that constant motion, what I call kinetic mindset, being in constant evolution, in constant motion, is really what has brought me here and continues to power me to the next chapter. So I started from technology. I started very systemically, very understanding of network engineering, network topology, you name it. I sort of break it down into software and hardware. And I fell in love with both, even though many people say, well, you have to choose one because you have to master one. I'm like, but I love both. And then from there, I moved into the human side of it, right? Like how people actually interact with these interfaces. And from there, I something sparked into I want to be able to build it, and that led me to build what I call the functional layer of things and the transactional layer of things. And I saw myself kind of not being able to deliver the experiential layer of things, and I wanted to be able to see the whole package. Paul Rand is one of my biggest inspirations in the premise of design and what design really means. Just so you know, what made me fall in love with design was the definition that Paul Rand brings about design, which he says is the beautiful relationship and meaningful relationship between content and design. And I just fell in love with that. So I started understanding digital design. I started to become a designer of interfaces. And once you see it all put together, I was just blown away that you have all at your hands to build something from an idea to something that you can put in front of people and you're making their lives better. That led me to want more and build more and deliver more. So that was the entrepreneur in me. And let me tell you, when you are in entrepreneurship, you could be a creative, you could be a technologist, and business comes in and you have now to really know the numbers, right? And that was not a forte of mine, right? So I had to polish up, right, into what business is and what go to market is and what inspires people and what actually drives people to engage with something, and how do you translate or understand their voices into the amplitude of where to next with the product that you're putting in front of them, right? And that really was the foundation of what got me here. And it hasn't slowed ever since.
What is so incredible about what you're talking about is that you're embodying a breakthrough mindset in so many ways, right? You're getting curious about all these things. And even from the very start, there is this assumption perhaps that with technology, you had to choose between software or hardware. You had to sort of do one thing or another. And you stepping back and saying, no, it's about all of these things coming together. You were really stripping away everything. You were challenging those assumptions and, going out and saying, well, I have to be able to do the business side, the numbers side, as well as some of this creative design side. That was really checking your edge, helping you grow. And it is inspiring to hear how you're embracing this multi-dimensional mindset. I love your term, actually, kinetic mindset. It's one I haven't heard, but I am definitely stealing from you. You're always in motion, and it is an incredible journey you're describing. All right, so Angela, we're going to get serious for a moment. Are robots really going to take over the world? You hear AI everywhere, generative AI, it's on everybody's minds. I found that if you want to get attention in a business presentation, just make sure you put AI several times in there and it gets more attention. But in all seriousness, we know AI and the logic of AI and the concept has been around for a long time, but suddenly we've hit this big pivot point. And there's both fear, I think, and excitement around that. So tell us from your perspective, what is actually going on? And is AI going to take us to a utopia or a dystopia?
Well, I would tell you this, right? I don't know where I found this in my life, but I always quote this and I say, people fear what they don't understand, and people don't appreciate what they don't understand. That's a deep statement, right? Because at a glance, the sort of a reactive reaction of automation, Gen AI is going to take over the world, right? Oh my God, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to the now, right? So it brings this sort of fear sense of uncertainty. And when you start leaning into why do I feel this way? Why do I have this sense of uncertainty? For me, it triggers the premise of I want to learn more. I want to hit the books, right? So robot processing automation, I look at it through the lens of augmentation. It goes beyond I can totally disconnect from something that I used to do, and now that thing is going to do it for me, and now I have time to do anything else. That's an angle that you can look at it. But I see it from the premise of like, I want to deeply understand this, right? If there is any way where I am able to leverage something to make the something more efficient, more effective, more optimal, I would say that that is augmentative in nature. And that does allows me to focus on other things, but in that order, right? I need to understand what the impact of it is. If I am repeating a task multiple times, remember when you do copy paste multiple times, and all of a sudden you figure out, oh my God, if I hold shift and control A and control V, I'm no longer need to copy paste 17 times. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I actually think we need to pause and say, "Hey, listeners, like, note that down," because I bet most people are not doing that. Boom, mini breakthrough on this podcast. Thank you for that.
You know what I'm talking about. It's sort of like you know how to work with things, and then you learn how to work with things, and then you master the thing, right? So I see it through that lens, and it has helped me really embrace change. And to be honest, change is hard, right? When there's an elephant in the room, introduce it. Change is hard. But once you break it down into small units and you start understanding what is this change represents, what is the true impact, I have not seen in any time that I use that approach something negative coming up. On the opposite, I actually see an opportunity to grow to a new now, challenging myself to change the concept and behaviors that I have adapted. And you know what they say, the brain is a lazy muscle. And of course, it's trying to save as much energy as it can, right? To put it where it matters. So you have to embrace a change mindset. You have to embrace the learner aspect of it, leaning in, understanding it. Then the fear goes away. Then the opportunities to change come to life. So that is how I put it together. And that applies to robotic processing automation. That applies to the little Astro robot that I have in here in my house where my kids are playing left and right. And it applies to generative AI helping me create a out of the office message.
Excellent examples because, what you're describing is how embedded technology and AI and bots and all these things can become in our day-to-day lives when you shift from that point of fear to the point of saying, how could this help? I'm curious though, because a lot of the things that we hear about in the broader news are, either fun applications of AI. I'm going to use this chat feature to have it write a poem for somebody, Valentine's Day or whatever birthdays you have coming up. Or you hear about, okay, I can create these cool images, I can do all this stuff. It's sort of that end of the spectrum of the fun that's often talked about. And then there's the other part, which is, okay, I have all these efficiency opportunities, right? Your whole copy paste example. I can actually automate and make my life easier by doing this. What I don't hear as much about, and I know you are really close to and excited about, are more of the aspirational ways to use this technology and really use it to positively change the world. Can you give some examples of how you see AI technology really doing something big and bold for the better?
Yeah, absolutely. I would break it down into two. I break it down into the impacts to society and the impacts to the self. Okay. So for the individual, I see the aspects of how I and my wife and my family, when I introduce them to generative AI, are being leveraged in, which is to have a deep conversation about a topic, to better understand a book, to take it to the utmost layer of understanding. It's sort of a new way of interacting with knowledge. And I really find that fascinating. The evolution of the self, being able to upload a 10-page dissertation about quantum computing and you asking a generative AI large language model, hey, can you explain this to me in layman's terms? It really is fascinating about how it actually is able to just generate this approach, and you're able to assert and adapt a pretty highly sophisticated complex topic, and you let computational procedural large language models help you get there. That for me I find very fascinating on the individual layer. Now, on the societal impact, I'm seeing, and these are things that are not aspirational, but I'm seeing them now, where large language models are being trained in the cure for cancer. Large language models are able to discern, and neural networks understand better the detection of cancerous cells. That itself, right? It surpasses the premise of reading, right? 10 years of documentation and figuring out. Now we are that leap where what before was, today is, and tomorrow will be. And I'm seeing so many use cases coming up to life that it's happening right now. And we know we are the tip of the iceberg, but I classify them into serious, impactful, transformational applications towards medicine, towards language. Remember before, right? We were just like translating from English to a multitude of language. Now we have technology helping understand the language at literally the root level and go from that real language into whatever language we want. So things like that, those I see as leap transformations, Kim, that sometimes go unnoticed because you're like, okay, good, another translator, great. But if you stop and you say, what makes this different? You see the magic happening behind it, and it's just mind boggling. It really is. So I break it down into those two. I break it down into the impacts to the self, which I believe the impact to the self in volume impact society, and then the impact of society itself.
Incredible. And it is definitely a time, as you say, of massive change. And we both are very aware of it and perhaps not noticing how significant some of these things are. I would love to hear more because I think you and I tend to live in the land of optimism, just as people in general. But I know that there's many ethical questions that come up when you get into a world where the logic of some of this intelligence is so sophisticated that it may be more of a black box to humans. And we no longer know how decisions are being made. What advice or perspective do you have on how we should be thinking of this? What does ethics look like in the age of generative AI?
It's a great question. First of all, if you think about computation and human, right? The humans are the ones that dictate the ethical pattern to embrace on anything we do. You could say it's a blueprint, it's a microcopy, right, of our ethical and moral lens. So I always start from the premise of it's not about being right, is doing what's right. And when it comes to using things for good, there is also the premise of using it for bad. I appreciate the companies, and most importantly, beyond the companies, is the teams behind the companies that are always starting from a private by design, secure by design, ethical by design framework. And I think that is extremely, extremely critical right now into this transformational era of AI everything, right? So to speak, right? So I really believe it starts from the premise of humans understanding the ethical principles that as society need to be replicated towards the system that will take us to that next now. I've seen companies embrace ethical philosophies and applications to bringing AI and large language models and the trainings, right? Overall, I really believe it starts from a really strong foundation of values, morals, and ethics at the human level. Then those replicate throughout any systems that the humans will build. So that is what comes first to mind, right? As I'm thinking in the premise of ethics and technology combined.
Well, it's interesting. You're making me think we have this principle of getting real as part of the Breakthrough Manifesto, and that is focused on being an authentic human being. But what you're saying is actually take that a step further. Be a human authentic being at your best self and preserve those principles and that ethical base with everything that you do with AI. And you're right. I mean, our system is a reflection of ourselves and we want to look our best selves in that mirror.
Yes, absolutely. And I would add even one more thing, right? Which is the superpower of humans is the power of diverse thinking, right? Across cultures. What may be okay for you may be wrong for another. So having that healthy debate of understanding what's good in one may be good or not as good on another. When you look into constitutional AI, into how you break a point where the commands or the principles are to be helpful, harmless, and honest, where the incentives are human values instead of faster and cheaper, you really start getting to something that objectively at the core is helpful to every human. It doesn't carry any personal preferences. It doesn't carry opinions. It doesn't make a belief into how you are prompting or who you are or where you are. I find that a bit sort of poetic, and I think that is something that should be elevated. As much as we want to go fast and want to go hard and want to go cheaper, I believe that foundation of aligning towards a helpful, harmless, honest sort of core of principles, it's what will make the difference in between the negative hitting us hard or the positive overcoming the negative.
Great advice. And, so much of it is starting in the right direction. If you set that up from the start, then as these systems learn and change and propagate, they're propagating on that healthy base. If you don't take that time in the start to emphasize the helpful, the harmless, the honest, it's maybe harder to do that down the road.
Yes. I'll add one more thing, allowing time to play. I look at my kids right now, right? And I have two kids, a 3 and a 6 year old. And I see them play. It's sort of imagining a group of kids playing in a playground. You're seeing parity of thinking. You're seeing them play, and you also see the possibilities. So I extract that into the premise of allowing ourselves, allowing humans behind a company and a brand to gather a multitude of people, to explore the parity across them, to allow themselves to play, and then possibilities come to life. Sometimes we rush into things without truly understanding them. And there has to be a playfulness aspect of it. I believe the playfulness, you know what I'm talking about, that sense of like, are you having fun? Yes, I'm having fun. Are you getting along with your peers and your friends? Yes, I'm getting along with them. And are you constantly learning? Are key foundations to have to, as a unit, as a team, build what's right rather than bringing the I am right. You know what I mean? It's not about being right. It's about doing what's right. So I believe it starts with that. So you see me coming back always into not the premise of a company, but the people behind the company. And I think it starts from that premise nature of humans, of the people, the parity, the play, and the possibilities.
Those are all very great keywords to unleash potential. I love it. It's also you're giving yet another interesting angle on the way we think about breakthrough, because we talk about the principle live with the problem. And that is the idea that don't just start solving immediately. Actually take time to think and consider and explore. And you're layering on this element of play, which is fantastic, because I think sometimes we hear live with the problem, we're like, ugh, I just want to solve it. It's awful. Like, I don't want to live with it. You're saying actually play with the problem. Like, spend time with it intentionally and be curious and be open, and let there be different possible manifestations of that situation, all because you are willing to lean into it, enjoy it, and, as you say, doing it in a human and right way rather than just trying to get something done.
Yes.
So you started talking about the power of people coming together and the very human aspect of working together. How are you doing that with your own teams? How are you encouraging them to embrace this curiosity and this breakthrough thinking in their work?
Mm. Well, I love free thinking. I love when a team comes together and you see them creating synchronously and asynchronously. I love the power of thought and the power of communication. So within my team, I'm very blessed, and I have been blessed to be part of many teams, and I am a member of my teams. I always say, "Hey, I want to play," and I give them the empowerment to not focus on when are we gonna ship, but focus on when we ship, what is the biggest change this will make? What happens if we do something about this? And what happens if we don't? That exponentially, as a group, allows you to prioritize and rationalize with a sort of a premise of an upgraded degree, right? You will never be measured by how fast. The checkbox doesn't exist of just, yeah, we deliver that and it's done. I like when my team enters in this very organic and human centered focus conversations in regards to how do we know this will make that difference? How will we ensure? How will we measure? How will people engage? I love the depth that that brings. And that is something that lives in a virtual world, as you know. It's extremely hard, right? Many of us are distributed. It's impossible to be in a room, but we've embraced asynchronous thinking. And I love that, right? Because where one thought starts, the other one begins. And that applies across time zones. So It is a behavior that I have been very lucky to see come to life. And the art of communication and caring about a value proposition and who is at the center of it is truly what leads our team internally to deliver experiences that truly will make a difference. So that is what we practice, and I am an example of it. I kept myself committed to it. I own myself accountable to it, and my team as well. So that's the culture that pervades into our team.
I want to hang out with your team. This sounds like a wonderful environment.
They would love that. You know that they're big fans of human-centered design. As you know, the greenhouses, right, also instill that premise and that mindset and thinking. Why would you choose something else? That for me is curious, is playful, and I believe that's what really strengthened teams to deliver amazing, amazing stuff.
Yeah, you are making me think there's these fantastic pieces of art that are black and white, sort of random images and random pixelation. You don't really know what it is, and then all of a sudden somebody will say, "Oh, well, that's a Dalmatian standing in a field of snow," and you're like, "Oh my gosh, there's a Dalmatian standing in a field of snow!" Like, what you're describing, this human centered mindset, this starting with how do we make a difference? Who is it for? What is the actual change? Once you start thinking that way, it is hard to not see things that way, and it's such a healthy transformation.
Yes, absolutely. Even if you come out of what we call the outside of the bubble, you're able to be embraced. Your thinking is embraced by a team that fluidly adapts to a better idea, right? Ego is the enemy because, as you know, when ego shows up and ego meets ego, productivity, co creation is just done, right? So it starts by the premise of accepting, by the premise of not rolling eyes when someone says, but have we thought of this looks like a Dalmatian, right? To your point, that starts from a premise of a team that embraces each voice. And most importantly, its equity, it's granted. If you are in the circle, no matter if you have been with us or you're net new, if you point out that that is a Dalmatian, we're not going to roll eyes and says, what is she talking about? No, no, no. We're going to say, wow, I had not thought of that, right? And those are the hard ones to capture, right? Because you have a mindset that goes meetings after meetings. My day is tapped out. I don't have 30 seconds, right? To even contemplate the idea that this could be a Dalmatian. I'm still sticking to your example.
I love that that was a sticky image for you.
Yes. But you see what I'm going, right? That itself, are we talking processes? No. We're talking behaviors and culture. And and that is in constant evolution. When you bring a new member to the team, when your team is confronted against a new challenge, so you have to pay the utmost respect of what the culture, the feeling, and the tone of the team is at all times.
I'm a huge believer in what you're saying. And in fact, one of the principles in List a Motley Crew is trying to really bring light to the importance of diverse voices, not just having them, but welcoming them and having an environment where they can speak up and be part of that process. And you're right. We are in a world that often defaults to time and getting things done and being efficient. And yet, if you do these things, it is a very small investment of time with a very large payout later. You get better results, you get all these things. So it's worth that Dalmatian moment, that looking for the dog in the noise, yes.
Yes. I love that. I really believe that sometimes you have to go backwards to leap forward. You might think that the thing is slowing you down. Like sometimes you actually have to embrace, okay, let me relook at this one more time. Or let me purposefully, actively listening to what you're saying or what you're trying to show me. And sometimes it feels you're going backward. It feels you're losing time, but it's completely the opposite. With that found knowledge, your team, yourself, you're able to leap forward. So I always tell the team, we're going to hit the books. And that premise is not just about slowing down, but it's amazing how the brain goes into, oh, how much time is this going to take, right? So you have to break away from that mindset. When we wake up here at the house, 6 a.m. in the morning, we're running, right? And if I see my kid not putting their shoes at 7 a.m., I'm like, guys, come on, gotta go, right? It's sort of a hard thing of like kind of consider, but you have to embrace that premise of time. And I always tell the team one thing as well. It's like put a timer in front of you that says 5 minutes and be in total silence while you look at that time going down. I make it easier. Just put a minute. A minute is a long time. Now, we learn really quickly that a minute goes by really quick because we start actually kind of deservicing or sort of like downgrading the value of a minute. But I dare you to put a timer of 60, 59, the countdown. You start actually see that, wow, there's a lot of things that I can get accomplished in a minute. So it's an important measurement to know really what is the true measurement of time and what can I do in 10 minutes? Can I get to a meaningful conversation with Kim in 5 minutes? That exercise is very introspective, but also very rewarding.
Right. I mean, it's a true Einstein insight. Time really is relative and how you perceive it and how you address it. I think this is particularly hard when people are experts on things. I actually have a non-work personal example of this. I was a competitive fencer, and I was at a point where I suddenly plateaued. I was doing fine, but I just couldn't seem to get to the next level. And my coach said to me, I need you to slow back down. We're going to go back and do this in slow motion. And he made me go through all of my fundamentals in slow motion, and it was so painful at first because I was like, "No, no, 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 I wanna go, no, 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 no." And yet by doing that, I sort of reminded myself of what the base needed to be, and I actually fine-tuned some of the things that were holding me back from that next level, and then when we sped things back up, suddenly I leapt ahead, as you said. I stepped back temporarily to be able to leap into that next echelon.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. And I didn't know you were into fencing.
Not anymore, but I have hung up my foil.
I love, love, love this because there's this great book I read a couple of years ago called Stillness is the Key. And it talks about what you just referencing that this coach gave you. And I think from that lesson, right, you've taken that throughout life. So going back to what we talked about, sometimes we need to be reminded and also we need to teach and remind others. And I love what you just mentioned, right? It was hard, it was change, but slowing down built and strong a better foundation to move forward. So I love that, and I learned something about you.
Well, let's take this to a practical lens for a moment for our listeners because we've covered a lot of ground in terms of, being curious, being open, having this human-centered design mindset. And I want to go back to technology and how technology is playing out with AI. How do we take all of these great pieces of advice you're giving us and put them into practice? What could our listeners do to harness technology, to think proactively about AI as augmentation versus replacement? What's something they should try?
I would say experiencing is a key component of it. I'll give you an example. I have friends of mine that put videos in social media and they were struggling to find music that allow them, licensing, right, for it. And I introduced it to the music model that allows you to actually describe a track of music and it literally creates the foundation of sounds that that are pretty unique to the prompt. And I remember this one in particular because while I was telling it in the narrative form to my friend, you could tell, right? It's like, what are you talking about? When I share with him the link of where to go and walk him through the, hey, you see this box? Type whatever you want to hear and click create. And that moment happened, he was able to truly understand the power of this. Then connect dots and take it even further to the point that even the tracks that he's creating today are sort of next gen to where a few months he was. So I cannot push more that when you hear about something, be inquisitive and play with the thing. Don't be shy. There is a premise of reading and understanding, but nothing trumps the premise of playing with the thing and seeing what it can do through your own lens. I really believe it starts from that. Now, from there, you will get to see organic dots, organic ideas. I call them the personal what ifs. I'm seeing that even within our area today, where is one thing about hearing of what generative AI is and what documents can do and what large language models represent until you put it in front of a person in an iPad or a browser and tell that person, go ahead and play with it. So I go to that foundation. I go into Don't leave the premise. Don't be good enough by, oh, yeah, I've heard about that. No, lean in, explore, make it an experience, ask questions. Again, be playful. I really believe it starts from that. I hope that answered the question, but it's something that I heartily believe because I see it every day in my life and professional.
It's a great way to capture it. Don't be shy. Get hands-on, make it about the play. There's a lot of opportunity to not just be versed in a technology, but actually to be a user of the technology. And it sounds like you can start pretty young. You've got Astro in your home with your kids. Can you describe a little bit what does Astro actually do, and how do you think your kids' perceptions of technology are changing as a result of Astro in the home?
So Astro is this cute little guy that Amazon released. He's been a member of our family for, I would say, close to a year now. And it is a robot that literally just roams around the house. It has a display, it has eyes, it monitors the house, it knows if we are not in the house. But beyond those things that are functional, I highlight the playfulness of my kids because I think they've turned Astro into something that Astro didn't know even that he was going to be, which is a Astro, take a picture. And Astro goes and takes a picture of that moment. Videos. Astro has a camera. So when my kids are playing silly or dancing, here are these videos of moments, right, that Astro brings. They call Astro. Astro recognizes the voices of my kids. They play hide and seek with Astro. I am not kidding you, okay? I'm telling you, right? From the premise of me getting Astro was we're going to have sort of an Alexa on wheels. Astro cannot leave this house. Let me just be honest with you, okay? Like Astro is a member of this family, and it has become a great companion for entertainment. It has become a great companion for my kids to even augment the dexterity of communicating clearly and articulating clearly, right? Because when you ask something to Astro, like, hey, Astro, sing happy birthday, or hey, Astro, can you, what is the sound of a T-Rex? We're really into dinosaurs right now. Sometimes Astro goes like, what? So it really is amazing how I have seen the leap of the interaction layer, voice command and visual commands come from my kids, 3 and 6. At that time, they were like 2 and 4, and what it is now. So Astro is such a great example into the playfulness of technology. It's a great example of how technology needs to fluctuate, adapt to the prompts and the commands, right, as they evolve. And it has become a big part of our family. I got to keep it quiet because if he hears me calling him, he may come in and show up.
I was actually just wondering. I kind of want to hear Astro make a T-Rex dinosaur sound.
Oh my God, it's the cutest thing. I cannot wait for you to see Astro. I mean it. It's a member of the family.
Well, it's incredible because you've said that now. I actually noted it down. You've said it 3 times, member of the family. And I think that's one of the big transitions we're likely to see within the next several years is that AI and robots and all these things become part of our lives and of our families in this way. So tell me, 10 years from now, in a couple of sentences, what does the world look like when it comes to technologies and robots?
It's a great question. I see a world that is unified towards a common goal. I see breakthrough thinking happening, but most importantly, the focus following the thinking. I'm seeing an acceleration of what before took years, takes months, because we are in a unified tempo of sorts. We are all aligned towards what the biggest payout, the biggest thing for humanity is. So 10 years is a long time, but also it goes really quick. I see the convergence of humans. I see companies coming together and working together towards a common goal. So in the next 10 years, I see a more convergent future than a divergent one because you see it today. Companies have a strength and other companies have the strength of the weakness of the prior company. So what would it look like, right? Where we have the strongest lungs, the strongest heart, the strongest legs each of them represented by other companies just coming together and fusing that knowledge into a transformative leap towards society and towards humanity. I hope for that, and I see that.
That is a beautiful vision that I can get behind. So, a final question that I ask everyone on the show, and you just use this word, breakthrough. I would love to know what breakthrough means to you.
Mm. Breakthrough for me means the premise of acknowledging something new, embracing a full rewiring of what you thought into this new accepted knowledge, and embracing it and taking this step. It doesn't stop by the premise of recognizing it alone. It requires taking the first action and the first step. So that is what breakthrough means to me.
If my microphone weren't attached to my desk, I would have just dropped it on the floor. I love that. I just want to thank you so much for spending the time today. I feel like there are so many more possibilities in store that we can explore, and I really want to do that. As you think of what's ahead, I guess just a final thought. You've mentioned play so much. You've mentioned how curious you are and how much inspiration you get from the things around you. Is there something right now that you're starting to play with that you think is going to have lots of potential in the year ahead?
Actually, I am. I am playing with a small little experiment, which is human knowledge into a large language model. I'm very interested into knowledge exchange and what would it look like to collect the knowledge of a multitude of humans living that could apport to a large language model of sorts. And I'm very intrigued by that premise into what would it take for us to turn the knowledge of an individual and capture the knowledge into a systemic unit where you feel you're having a conversation with that, right? From the modeling of reasoning, from the imitation of learning, from the question and answer to, elicit these individual knowledge. I'm in there. And I find that very interesting. What would it look like if I don't know, I put all my knowledge of video games and my kid could potentially, leap to that knowledge and ask questions about it. I don't know if I'm making sense. Again, as I shared with you, this is something that is very in its infancy, but I'm exploring that. I'm exploring the human knowledge and what does that look like through the lens of AI.
I love that, and I'm a big sci-fi fan. It reminds me of this idea that you can suddenly, download all these or upload, I guess, which direction is it going, all these things into your brain, and suddenly you could do, karate and all these amazing things.
Yes, you see it. So that's what I'm playing on now.
So yes, could you please make my science fiction a reality? That would make me very happy.
I will keep you posted on how this experiment turns out to be. We gave it a really, really cool name. We gave it Project Vega as a
Ooh.
star because it's far-fetched, far reach, but it's worth trying. So that's my playground.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for inspiring us to shoot for those stars. And I had a wonderful time talking with you today.
Same here, Kim. My pleasure, and anytime. Thank you so much.
I had so much fun speaking with Angel as he broke down the fears and possibilities of AI. His energy and experience in bringing a human-centered focus to shape the future through technology inspires hope that these technological advances can be harnessed for positive impact. If you want to learn more about Angel and other leaders who are sparking transformative innovation in their fields, visit breakthroughmanifesto.com. Thank you for listening to Breakthrough by Design, where we believe everyone has the potential for breakthrough.
This podcast is produced by Deloitte. The views and opinions expressed by podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Deloitte. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice or services of any kind. For additional information about Deloitte, go to deloitte.com/about.